Probably the most important thing to me about archery is it's such an individual sport. If you succeed, it's because you did it, and if you fail, it's because you did it. You don't have anybody to blame. There's nobody trying to block your shot. There's no teammates to blame it on. It's you, and in that aspect, it's very fulfilling. Concentration at the top levels in archery is the key to success. Actually, not just concentration, but whoever has their mind game the best that day is going to win the tournament. When you get to a top level, international level, everybody is the same as far as form and technique, pretty close. But whoever has their mental game ready is the one that's going to win the competition. Basically, it's your overall, how you look at the tournament, how you handle pressure. If your form's on that day, then you just let everything happen subconsciously. You try not to consciously think about this is what I have to do step by step. That's what practice is for. To where your muscle memory works, and then you just let your subconscious shoot the arrows for you because it knows what to do. So if you can turn off your conscious mind, you'd be perfect. For me, aiming is the least important thing. All I do is look at the target and look at it through my sight and let my mind take care of that, because your eye won't let you not aim. I don't think about the step-by-step execution, but just actually finishing the shot, coming through the shot, and everything else happens subconsciously.
The type of bows we shoot are called recurve bows. The middle of the bow is the riser section. It's made out of a magnesium aluminum composite. The limb is the part of the bow that connects to the handle that does all the actual flexing. It does all the work. There's a top limb and a bottom limb. The limbs are now made out of syntactic foam and carbon graphite. They went to the foam because there's no grain in foam like there was in the wood. And the wood would change stiffnesses in different temperatures. If it was hot, it would be weaker. If it was cold, it would be stiffer. The foam doesn't do that. It's also more stable laterally. It doesn't twist as easy as the wood. So it makes it much more consistent, much faster because it's a lighter material. The bowstrings now are made out of Spectra 1000. It's a plastic material. It lasts forever, virtually, but it doesn't break and it doesn't stretch. So you can shoot the same string a long period of time. If you decide to change strings, you can put a brand new one on. It doesn't stretch, so it shoots the same as the old one. On the bow itself is the stabilizing system, which are all the long rods that you see sticking out away from the bow. What they do is help balance the bow, take some of the shock out when you shoot, and make it harder to torque in your hand. If there's any torque on the bow, naturally it's going to affect where the arrow hits on the target. A good stabilizer setup on your bow is one that's very forgiving and you're able to control it, meaning it's not too heavy and you won't start to wear out at the end of the tournament. You want something that's stable and is very consistent, makes the bow, when you do release, the bow will jump straight out towards the target and then tip forward. You don't want the bottom limb to jump out first. You don't want the bow to jump out sideways. You want it to jump straight towards the target. I shoot a very light mass weight bow and control it easier. I have my stabilizer rods slightly down, below center, and slightly out. It gives me the stabilization and the balance that I like. It's a personal preference how you want to do it. Also, the TFCs are set fairly stiff on my setup. The sight is probably one of your most important pieces of equipment on the bow. The adjustments on it for the elevation, for the different distances, and then the windage. Some people adjust for windage. If the wind's blowing, they'll make an adjustment on their sight. I prefer to aim off because you never know when the wind's going to quit. So if the wind stops and you've moved your sight and you forget how far you moved it, it could cost you points. Elevation is the biggest adjustment. If one day, for some reason, you may be shooting low, you can change the elevation so you don't have to aim off high or low. You aim off to allow for wind. If the wind's blowing from left to right, you would aim on the left-hand side. And it's just a by guess and by golly kind of thing. It's a feel. You feel the wind's blowing a certain amount, you'll start out maybe aiming in the edge of the 7 ring and see where the arrow drifts. If it ends up in the 10 ring, then that's where you aim the rest of them. But that's part of being a good archer, is having that feel. Very, very much of archery is a feel. Getting in the right rhythm, feeling the shot, knowing what you did wrong in the shot or knowing what you did right in the shot, and being able to reproduce it. Now I'm going to install my sight and show you how to level the sight bar with the bowstring. This is very important so you don't change your windage at different distances as you move your sight block up and down the sight. To align my sight bar with the string, what I do is take a 3x5 card and tape it onto the sight bar. What you do is you make sure that the edge is lined up with the edge of your sight bar, so you butt it up against here. And once you have that done, then you prop your bow up. You want to line up your bowstring along the edge of the card. And they should line up perfectly parallel. And then you know that your sight bar is level. If the edge of the card and the string are not parallel, to level your sight, you loosen these screws and pivot the sight whichever direction you need to move it to level it with the string. Another important thing with tuning is your brace height. That's the distance from the throat of the handle to the string. Measure it with your bow square. Each bow length has a different range of acceptable brace height, and you should stay within the manufacturer's limitations. For my 68-inch Hoyt, I shoot 8 7/8 of an inch. Another very important thing is the tiller. And on the Hoyt, it is adjustable. The tiller is a distance from the top of the handle to the string and the bottom of the handle to the string. There should be more of a space between the top. Recommended range is from a 1/16 of an inch up to a 1/2 of an inch. On the Hoyt, the tiller adjustment is done by these screws here. This is also a weight adjustment. You can adjust 10% of the bow's weight, plus or minus. A very important piece of equipment for tuning is the cushion plunger. To start with, use a medium spring and set it at a medium tension. Once you set your plunger tension, then you want to adjust the depth and center it in the center of the arrow. This is made a lot easier with the Hoyt because of the vertitune. It allows you to adjust the plunger up and down. So you insert the plunger. The tip is over here on this side now. Once you install the cushion plunger, you want to set the depth so that the arrow is slightly outside the center line of the string. To do this, you can use these pre-made string alignment, or you can measure the limb and make a mark in the very center of the limb. Now we align the string down the center of the limbs with the marks we put on earlier. Next, you adjust the in and out position of the cushion plunger so the arrow is sitting on the outside of the string with the string still sitting down the center of the limbs. With the string still lined up down the center of the limbs, you want the outside of the string to just touch the inside of the arrow shaft. After installing your arrow rest, start by attaching a knock set 3/8 to 1/2 of an inch above square. Where the arrow attaches to the string is where you have your knocking point, which is almost a ball that attaches to the string, so your knock is in the same place every time. Because if you get your knock too high on the string, the arrow's going to go low. If you get the knock too low, it's going to go high and it won't fly correctly. This is a fine-tuned place in the string that only works for an individual archer with his particular setup. It's very critical to have the knock in the right place on the string. So your knock set is what locates that for you. The last step in the setup process is installing the sight block and adjusting the sight pin so that it's directly over the arrow shaft. Determining what type of arrow and how to set the arrow up is completely trial and error. The arrows you get sized by how long they are and how many pounds you shoot, because the arrow has to be matched to the bow to get the best performance out of it. Then you put on your knocks, you put on the points, and the type of fletch you want. Now to determine this, it takes hours and hours of testing. What size fletch, how much angle, where they're placed on the shaft, how far up or down, what type of knock works best, what length works best, what stiffness of arrow works best, what weight point works the best. So there's a lot of playing around that goes into getting an arrow to match and shoot well for you. The point of the arrow varies in weight. The more weight you have in the point, the weaker it makes the spine of the arrow, because there's more mass in front, so it takes more energy to move the arrow, so the arrow bends more. So you can adjust the spine of your arrow by the weight of your point. So if the arrow's a little too stiff, you can put a little heavier point in. If the arrow's too weak, you can put a lighter point in. You can also adjust what's called center of balance. The more weight you have up front, the further you move your center of balance up front, it'll change the way the arrow groups. So by how much weight you put in the point, you can change your center of balance and also change the spine and make the arrow group the way you want it to. Recently, they've come out with a carbon aluminum arrow. And what it is a very thin aluminum tubing with carbon graphite bonded over the outside of it. Then they came out with an all-carbon arrow, which is 100% carbon, no aluminum in it. It was much lighter than the arrows with the aluminum in them and smaller diameter. The only problem was, however it was made, is the way it stayed. So if it was made crooked, there was no way to straighten it because there was no aluminum in it. EASTON came out with a new generation of aluminum carbon arrows that is even smaller in diameter, the aluminum is smaller, and the carbon is barreled, meaning it's thicker in the middle and thinner on the ends. So you've got the stiffness where you need it in the middle of the arrow, you've got less weight, and it's more stable.
In doing the bear shaft tuning method, the knocking point is very important and should be adjusted first. To do this, shoot 2 flet shafts in a nice group. Then shooting the bear shaft, see where it strikes in relationship to the group. If it strikes at the same elevation as the group, then your knocking point is correct. If it strikes slightly below the group, you need to lower your knocking point, or if it strikes above the group, you need to raise your knocking point. Once you have your knocking point properly adjusted, you need to adjust the tension on your cushion plunger. There are several factors that will affect the left-right impact of the bear shaft when adjusting the tension on your plunger. One is the spine of the arrow, the tension of the cushion plunger, the point weight, the brace height, and how tight the knock fits on the string for the lighter weight bows. After you've completed your basic tuning, adjusted your knocking point and your cushion plunger, you want to make sure that you have perfect clearance so that the vanes don't touch the arrow rest or the cushion plunger. I usually start at 18 meters when I'm shooting my groups. After I feel I have a good tune, then I'll move back to 30 meters and check it there and make any small adjustments from that distance. You want to move back to 50 or 70 meters and do your fine tuning. To do this, you shoot fletched arrows and shoot for groups and make fine tuning adjustments on your cushion plunger and on your brace height to find out where it groups the very best. This may be slightly different than what makes the bear shaft hit directly in the group.
I feel form is probably one of the most important things to become a top archer. There is a basic form that everybody tries to achieve, but depending on how you're built and how long your arms are and how thick your chest is and all these different variables, depends on how close to the ideal form you can come. So you have to work around your own physical structure. But the biggest thing with form is consistency. If you can become consistent in what you do, it doesn't have to be perfect. It helps. And an archer with better form will be more consistent. Even his bad days are still going to be closer to what his good days are. It's the consistency of your form that really counts.
I shoot with a slightly open stance, about 45 degrees to the target, because it gives me much better stability. My bow hand is very relaxed in the bow. My knuckles are out at about a 45-degree angle with the web of my hand in the throat of the bow grip. That's where most of the pressure will be. My string fingers, I start out a little behind the first joints. I have about 60% of the weight on the center finger, 30% on the bottom finger, and only about 10% on the top finger. As I come up to my pre-draw, I take a full breath, and as I'm settling into my anchor, I let out about half the breath and then hold it during the entire shot. To achieve maximum back tension, when coming out of your pre-draw and coming to full draw, you want to start by rotating your shoulder back. Then you come into anchor and make sure that your back elbow is aligned from your front bow hand all the way to the back elbow. It's important to remember when shooting a clicker, you shoot the clicker, don't let the clicker shoot you. When coming to full draw and anchoring, you want to keep your motion continuous, the pull continuous through the entire shot to make the clicker go off. To release the string, I let go by strictly relaxation of my forearm muscles, so the string is actually pulled out of my fingers. I don't physically or consciously try to turn loose of the string. My physical training program consists of lifting weights, running for cardiovascular fitness, and shooting a lot of arrows. In my weight training program, I lift light weights and a lot of repetitions to build strength and endurance, but not increase bulk.
Maintaining your physical condition is very important because you are out there for so many hours. And you can watch the top archers that are in shape. Their scores will start out at a certain level and normally get better as the competition goes on. They become stronger. The archers that aren't in as good a shape start out at a certain level and their scores drop towards the end of the competition. Well, the end of the competition is where you got to have it now. That's when the most pressure gets on you, and that's when things start to go wrong. If you're not in good physical condition, it takes more of a toll on you. Once you get weak physically, it's very easy to get weak mentally because you're having to worry about being sore or being tired, or you can't do that. The better in shape you are, the more alert you stay, the more you can handle the pressure.
The most important parts of my training program is my mental training. I do visual imagery, as if I'm actually inside my body shooting the arrow, and from the outside, like I'm watching a videotape. I also use a lot of biofeedback, and it's something I do every day.
The mental training that I do consists of visual imagery. I will mentally shoot arrows in my head. I can see myself, I can visualize myself shooting arrows, not only from inside my body, but from outside my body, like I'm watching a videotape. You see yourself shoot perfect arrows with perfect form. I shot the Olympic final round probably 1,000 times over the year before the Olympic Games in my mind. I'd be at the Olympic Games, I could hear the crowd, I could smell the field, I could feel the wind, I could smell the target butts, everything. And the more vivid you can make your mental picture, the better you are. The thing that motivates me in archery is just wanting to be the best in the world. I'm very competitive, and it's hard for me to play a game and not play to win. I also just enjoy it. I love the sport. I like to stand out there and practice. I like to shoot arrows. I like to watch them fly. I like to watch them hit the middle. It's just a lot of fun.
Like every true champion, we at Easton Aluminum are driven to be the best in the world. Easton ACE arrows are the lightest and stiffest shafts made in the world today. With the advances in Easton's research and development, ACE arrow shafts are designed for optimum aerodynamic performance and accuracy, as well as providing for precision internal fitting of nocks and points. ACE arrows are engineered with the best characteristics of ultra-thin, high-strength aluminum tubing sheathed in high-modulus carbon fiber, which provides an arrow shaft of superior strength and durability. More honors have been won with Easton than with any other arrow shaft in the world. If there's a better arrow to be made, you can bet it will have our name on it.